So I'm going to start with a really basic, obvious statement. I hope it's obvious. Jesus didn't do miracles to show off. Should be pretty clear, right? He wasn't trying to get the girl. Wasn't trying to show anybody up. There's no YouTube back in the day, so, he wasn't trying to get any likes or anything like that. Jesus did miracles because not of what he wanted people to think of him, but simply because of who he was, who he is. He's the guy that does miracles. And in our reading today, this feeding of the 5,000 is such an important and powerful message. It's in all four of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And just to put that on par, the resurrection story isn't in all four of the Gospels. Okay, so now you know what we're talking about, right? This story is so important, it's in all of the Gospels. So whenever something like that happens, I think maybe we should pay attention to it a little bit, right? I'm biased, but okay. So let's get into it. So we got these 5,000 people. Well, first of all, there's not 5,000 people, are there? There's 5,000 men. All right, some of you know that. There's 5,000 men plus women and children. So that's easily another 5,000. So there's easily another 10,000 people total, at least, hanging around listening to Jesus. And they've been coming in all day, right? Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. So at first there's a small group, and there's some more small group, and then eventually somebody goes to the store, and they're like, where is everybody? And they're like, oh, there's this concert going on with this guy. And then everybody goes to find out about this guy. So soon enough, there's all these people, and they've been listening to him all day. None of them had any food. It's the end of the day, and the disciples come to Jesus, and they go, hey, these guys are hungry. And there's not a McDonald's for like 25 miles. Years, thank you. Yes, closer. Thank you, Devin. Okay, so they come up to Jesus like, Jesus, these people are hungry, and Jesus says, you feed them. Now that is like just the most bold statement ever, because it would have been physically impossible. I mean, look at what's going to happen. There's thousands of people. With the practicality of feeding these people, the financials of feeding these people, this is an impossibility. How are we going to feed them? So I wanted to take a second. I wanted to look at this. So we're looking at faith. So I want to talk about how faith intersects with miracles. And this is one of those miracles that we talk about all the time, but maybe we've never looked at it with faith. So the first thing you have to do whenever you have whenever you want to see a miracle is you have to admit that there's a problem. If you don't have a problem, then you don't need a miracle, do you? Now, what's the problem? So if you wake up in the morning and you're looking in the mirror and you're thinking, oh man, I got a little more on me today, I don't know how I'm going to get this off. You don't need a miracle, you need a diet. Okay, if you're saying, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this, I don't know what's going on. Maybe you don't need a miracle, maybe you need a budget. There are things in our life that we don't need miracles for. We need to act. So if you need a miracle, if you want a miracle, you have to look and you have to admit, I need a miracle. This thing I'm looking at, this problem I have, is huge. It's too big, I can't solve it. Now, when we encounter problems, for the most part, most of us do at least one of the next three things. All right, we procrastinate, we pass the buck along, or we worry. We all do this. It's called being human. When we procrastinate, what are we saying? We're putting it off. We're not going to address the problem. We don't want to look at the problem. We don't want to pay attention to the problem. We don't want to have anything to do with the problem. This is what happened in the Bible story. Late in the day, the disciples come up to Jesus. Now look, they had been there all day long. People have been coming up all day long. At what point would you have said, oh man, we've got a lot of people, we might want to do something about this? They waited until Jesus closed the book and said, I'm done. And then they went, uh-oh, now we have to do something about this. They procrastinated. Like the rest of us, we have all found ourselves in that position. We've all said, hey, you know what, if I don't do anything, this will probably solve itself. Then we put our head in the sand and we hope that nothing happens. Look, if you have cancer, don't put your head in the sand. Do something about the cancer. If you have a real problem, you do something about it. If you have water and the water is rising in your house, you don't hope somebody else is going to turn off the hose. Go turn off the hose. This is what happens though in our life. If something happens and we look at it and we say, maybe somebody else can do something. So my question is to you, what problem do you have in your life that you're procrastinating on right now? What problem do you have? What problem in your marriage have you decided you're not going to pay attention to? What problem in your body have you decided that you're not going to address anymore? What problem in your finances have you decided that is outside of your ability to handle? Or maybe there's something in your spirit that you're neglecting, that you've decided you're not going to touch. What problem are you procrastinating on? The second thing we and the disciples all do is we pass the buck. We say, it's not my problem. Look, if they knew what they were missing, then they would do this, but they don't know what's going on. Oh, I have nothing to do with it. They came in and they did this to me. Now look, in our lives, it happens that sometimes things come into our life and we can't do anything about. That happens. But if we decide that everything in our life all of a sudden isn't our problem, it's somebody else's problem, then we're passing the buck. We're not solving any problems. We actually become part of the problem because we're not solving any problems. The disciples did exactly the same thing. They went up to Jesus and said, Jesus, we've got to feed these people. And then they said, but we didn't invite them here. We didn't invite them here. Send them away, Jesus, is what they said to Jesus. Send them away. We didn't want them to be here. We weren't planning on them being here. Get them out of here. They want to pass the buck on. There's people, there's women, there's children, let them starve. Because of the last thing, they worried. They stressed. If you do the numbers, and it said in our Bible reading how many denarii it was, that's about 8 months worth of wages. 8 months of wages it would have taken. I can see Peter grabbing Judas and saying, Judas, how much do we have in the bag? How are we going to feed all these people? How are we going to get everything here? How are we going to get the food here? How are we going to keep it hot? Is this covered under insurance? That's a real thing. When you work in churches, oh man, is this covered under insurance? Comes up probably too often. How are we going to feed them? Jesus said, you feed them. Because really the problem isn't how they're going to feed them. It's why are they worrying about it? Look, this is Jesus. This is the one who calms storms and walks on water, raises the dead, makes the blind see, makes the deaf hear. They're worried? Why are they worried? But they're worried. They're wondering. They don't know. They don't have the faith it takes. Jesus said to them, you feed them. This is practically impossible. This is financially very difficult. This is a humanly impossible problem to solve. So how has God asked you to do something in your life that's impossible? What's the impossible thing in your life that God has asked you to do, but then you said, no, I can't. I don't have the time. No, that's not me. That's somebody else. I can't do that. I don't have the money. I don't have the energy. I don't have the education. Jesus, not me. It's somebody else you're talking to. This happened all the time in the Bible, by the way. Moses, go free my people. Not me. I don't know who you're talking to, but it can't be me. Jeremiah, go help my people. No, not me. Isaiah, go. Here I am, Lord. For what it's worth, Isaiah has the largest book in the Bible. Why does God ask you to do the impossible? Now see, look, God can do these miracles. But remember what I said at the very beginning of the sermon? God doesn't do miracles to show off. Yeah. So now all of a sudden it means a little different because God asks you to do miracles so that you might be stretched. God doesn't need the miracles. He knows what He can do. God doesn't need to do the miracles. You need God to do the miracles. And God asks you to do the miracles so that your faith might be stretched more than whatever it is now. Because God isn't interested in you being a bump on the log. Remember, Christians are made. They're not born. And to make a Christian, it means you have to exercise. You have to work out. If you want to get to the Olympics, you have to do something. Right? If you want to be an Olympic diver, you're going to have to get wet. My bet is you're going to have to get wet a lot. You're going to get so wet, you're going to hate the water. And then you're going to get so wet that you will become the water. And then, when you can flip and flop and do a whole bunch of amazing things, and the water is just an afterthought, you get Olympic gold or silver or bronze or whatever. Same thing with Christianity. The first time you decide to stress your faith, you know what's going to happen? You're going to drown. Literally in the waters of baptism. Where the old Adam is drowned, it says, and the new one is resurrected. And then you're going to be stretched, and you're not going to like it. Why? Because Jesus doesn't want you to be you. He wants you to be the you He made. And that's a stretch. And just like an athlete, you're going to have to work those muscles. That's your spirit. And just like an athlete, you're going to have to push yourself. That's your faith. And just like an athlete, you can win the prize. This is what the Bible says, that the race is an endurance race. So how do miracles work? The first is you have to admit you have a problem. You have to admit that there is something that God needs to get inside your life with. The second thing is you have to give something to God. Because if God's going to work in your life, remember, He doesn't need to do the miracles, you need Him to, then you have to be invested. We have a little boy in our story who gave 5 loaves and 2 fishes. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. First of all, when I was reading this, I got a little angry. I got a little angry because what happened here? We have 5,000 people, 5,000 men, and another 5,000 women and children, right? So we have about 5,000 family units. 5,000 people. And the only one who has anything to give is a little boy. I have some choice words. Because you know what was happening? We know that there were wealthy people among those 5,000. And they brought food for themselves. And they had it in a basket. And it was on the ground. They're all wearing robes. And they stepped over the basket and said they didn't have anything. Because they didn't want to share. They just waited. When nobody was paying attention, and they would have gone and found their basket. But it took a child. It took somebody that we would have said who was a fool to come up to Jesus and honestly give what he had. And he's our hero. He's our hero because he didn't hold back. Because he didn't have all of the jadedness we have. We all know why they held back. We all know why. Because if they had given up what they have, then they might have had none. Right? What good is that little bit to the 5,000 that's there? But if that child, he didn't know any better, so he gives. He gives the little that he has, and it's worthless in the face of 5,000 people. Really, truly has nothing to bear. But why did God bother? I mean, this is Jesus, right? He could have made it rain sausages. He could have made manna come up, right? This is what happened with the Israelites when they were walking around in the wilderness. Every morning there was manna, this dew kind of on the ground, and they would pick it up and they would eat it. Jesus could have done this stuff. Why didn't he do it? Why did he need somebody to do something? Because he needed some skin in the game. The only reason you care about anything is because you have something to care about. When you ante up, when you have skin in the game, when you have a dog in the fight, we have all kinds of cliches to talk about how it is that we care that something happens. And that's what happened here with this little boy. He gave what he had. And then Jesus used that little boy to show the rest of the world, the rest of us, how God works through miracles. It's not because we give something awesome and God goes, great, you've covered all the bases. All that happened was a little bunt, and the guy didn't even get to first base. But God said, home run, well done. Because that's how God works. He asks us to give what little we have. God, I only have a little time. I can't give it to you. Well, no, it's a little time, but you can give. God, I don't have my finances in order. What can I give to you? Well, you can. You can start. God, I don't have any talent. There's nothing I can do. I want to remind everybody in this congregation, I am the worst musician in the band. And they put up with me. And I give it to God. And it's not always horrible. We give God everything. And He gives us even more. We give God a little, and He gives us yet even more. If we don't give God anything, then what would He give us? Well, we're not going to see it, will we? We'll never give him the chance. 5 loaves and 2 fishes, that's a whole lot of nothing, really. But God knew what the solution to the problem was before they knew there was a problem. The disciples were there all day. They were procrastinating all day. They didn't want to pay attention to the problem, and then it's night, and all of a sudden, there's this problem. There's these people, and they need to be fed. God knew that there was going to be this problem. Jesus knew what the answer was before the disciples even knew that there was a problem. In your life, God knows the answer to your problem before you even knew you had a problem. Which is a wonderful thing, because then it means we can go to God and we can have the solution. So how do you get a miracle? You have to admit that there's a problem. You have to give what you have to God, and God will use whatever you give Him. When you have faith enough to expect that God will give you the answer, then you'll find the answer. If your faith isn't enough to ask God and give to God and expect Him to answer, then you know what? You're not going to get that answer. If your faith is so small that you can't go to God expecting to get the answer to the problem, you won't ever, because you never ventured anything. Not even a loaf or a piece of fish, let alone 5 loaves and 2 fishes. That might be too much these days. To actually give everything? Who would do that? Who would give their entire life? Who would sell everything they have? Now here's the best part. Here's the best part. When Jesus took these 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and He blessed them, and He fed all of the people that were there, the 10,000 plus people, then they collected 12 baskets full. Do you know why there were 12 baskets full? These are the 12 tribes of Israel. Through that little boy, through those followers of Christ, people who didn't even believe in Jesus were blessed. That's how our God works. He works through people, so not only will they be blessed, but everybody around them will be blessed, and maybe even people that don't even know. Our God is so amazing. He's thinking about things that we're not even thinking. He's on another level. He is truly the most awesome and powerful God. And as you are being blessed by God, He's blessing other people. There's this cliche, and it goes over and over, but I love it. Blessed to be a blessing. So if you have faith to recognize that there's a problem, and you have faith to give to the solution, and you have faith that God will give you the solution, then you get to be part of the solution. God likes to work through people. How often are you waiting in your life for God to work for you? That's not how God works. God is waiting on you to work through you. What are you waiting for?